Oh, hey there. Too scared to leave the backyard these days? Lord knows I am. And that brings me to the latest installment of Vice Beach Reads, Panic Room Edition. I'm talking about the late summer spine tingler that's keeping the Capitol up at night, Rage, by veteran DC reporter Bob Woodward. There's a lot of scary stuff in here, like the part where President Trump admits the coronavirus was, quote, deadly stuff, even as he told us to stay calm and carry on.
Did you mislead?
Well, I think if you said in order to reduce panic, perhaps that's so.
And that's interesting from a guy whose re-election campaign platform is panic. There's so much stuff Trump does want us to panic about, it's hard to keep track. There's undocumented immigrants, Antifa, low-income housing in the suburbs, China, riots, violent crime. Remember the caravan? Now he's warning voters that they've got two choices: President Trump or a hellscape lorded over by Democrats.
No one will be safe in Biden's America.
In case you need help visualizing this, Trump's got an ad that doesn't leave much to the imagination.
Seattle's pledged to defund its police department by 50%, even including a proposal to remove 911 dispatchers from police control.
The Republican National Convention was basically the hype show for a new zombie apocalypse franchise.
It's a horror film, really. They'll disarm you, empty the prisons, lock you in your home, and invite MS-13 to live next door.
Yikes.
These radicals are not content with marching in the streets. They want to take over.
What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods.
Yikes.
Human sex drug traffickers should not be allowed to cross our border. They want to enslave you to the weak, dependent, liberal victim ideology to the point that you will not recognize this country or yourself.
Yikes. Trump is so obsessed with this genre, I wanted to find out how a real pro rates his work. Dan Myrick, you directed one of the scariest movies of all time, The Blair Witch Project.
I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them.
What do you think of Trump's horror narrative?
I think he could slow the pacing down a little bit, space out the horror beats.
What are the elements of a really good horror story?
Well, usually there's some form of isolation, where the protagonist is in the woods or at a house that no one can get to, some form of disconnect where they can't get any help.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So how do these elements fit into the narrative that Trump's been spinning lately?
Fear is a great motivator. You want to keep people on the edge of their seat. You want to keep people engaged and tapping into that sort of primal motivator that we all have. In politics, it's no different. You've got people behind the scenes pulling the same strings, using the same techniques.
So you're a film director. Donald Trump is a reality TV star. Do you notice any tricks of the trade getting used here that might not be so obvious to the rest of us?
I certainly see some similarities in how they're rolling out their messaging, how they're rolling out their narrative that we employed on Blair Witch. Part of the trick with playing in this area of fact or fiction and sort of this murky fog is sort of like weaponizing the confusion a little bit, where you put something out there into the ether and let people start talking about it and passing it around. You allow the audience, their imagination, to sort of take over and run with it.
Does a good scary narrative need moments of solace, or can you just keep ramping up the tension for, say, 4 years?
Well, that's what you're taught as a script writer. When you're writing, especially horror, you want to give, beats of horror, but in between those beats, you want some moments to take a breath so you can kind of process what's happened. Having too much coming at the audience too quickly for too long desensitizes them to the horror.
For those of us who feel like we're trapped in a horror movie, what are the rules of surviving through to the end?
What I try to do is, one, limit my exposure to social media and the news. We're in this kind of survival mode, if you will, like you are in a horror film, that you have to sort of pick your battles, which zombie is closest.
So then, is Donald Trump a great horror writer or the greatest horror writer?
He's definitely a great horror writer.
Well, there you have it. Fear works in movies and politics, at least sometimes. But people have been trapped in this horror show for years now. They might be exhausted. And that may be what November comes down to for Trump. Whether people are scared enough to vote for a sequel.